Okay, so today we have Bob Burg,
Wow, that's
who
pretty cool.
who wrote The Go-Giver.
Yeah,
It's one of the few books we've both read.
yeah. Probably the
Um,
only book besides the good book that we both read.
oh yeah,
And the timing that we read this book has like ignited all these things in our life. And the
yeah,
fact that it came together, wow. So we hope you guys enjoy it. I
yeah.
think it's cool because we think it's cool.
Bob, do you mind just giving the viewers a short background on you and your story?
No, not at all. I started out in broadcasting, first as a radio sportscaster, and then I did television news. I was the late night news guy at a very, very small ABC affiliate in the Midwestern United States.
Yes.
Yeah, I wasn't very good at it, though, and it wasn't long before I like to say I graduated into sales. The challenge was that I knew nothing about sales. I had no formal training. And apparently the people who hired me didn't either, because they didn't teach me anything. It was just go out and sell stuff. So basically I was on my own, and so I knocked on a lot of doors and made a lot of calls, but didn't make a lot of sales. I had what the great Jim Rohn would have said. I had the motivation, but I didn't have the information. And both are important. Information without the motivation also isn't very helpful. You need both. So I was in a bookstore one day, and I came across a couple of books on selling, which doesn't sound like a big deal now, but this was 40 years ago. And back then, that there wasn't really a lot of that. It wasn't as out there as it is now. And so I had no idea there were even such things as books about selling. And so Zig Ziglar and Tom Hopkins were the two authors whose books I saw. Of course, they're legends, icons in the sales space. I got their books, and I like to say I never read them. I devoured them. And I would come home after work, and I would just study into the wee hours of the morning. And within a few weeks, my sales began to go through the roof. Wow. And there was really, when you think about it, no difference between who I was 3 weeks earlier and 3 weeks later, other than I now had a methodology. Yeah. I had a system. Now, I personally define a system as the process of predictably achieving a goal based on a logical and specific set of how-to principles. The key being predictability. If it's been proven that by doing A, you can get the desired results of B, then you know that all you need to do is A and continue to do A, and eventually you'll get the desired results of B. Well, this was a breakthrough for me. I had no idea something like that existed. So I started really getting into sales and loved it. But the greatest part of it was not the how-to aspect, which is very important, of course, but it was the personal development aspect. And so I started getting books that were recommended, such as Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People, Hill's Think and Grow Rich, Schwartz's The Magic of Thinking Big, Mandino's Greatest Salesman in the World, Klassen's Richest Man in Babylon, just all the classics of sales. And what I came to realize is that success is really an inside job. It starts here. Now, it manifests outwardly, sure, but it begins in here. And first, we've got to become the person who is worthy of that success. And so we need to keep building ourselves. And so this was just thrilling for me, because I wasn't a good high school student, wasn't a good college student. I got into very small college. I got in on academic probation, and I'm pretty sure I graduated on academic probation, if such a thing exists. So this is where my education really began: sales and personal development. And through the years, I eventually worked my way up to sales manager of a different company, and started sharing with others what was working for me, and began to speak on the topic of sales and communication skills and personal development. And I've been doing it now for quite a while, and it's been a lot of fun.
That's funny, because my story is similar in the fact that I had no idea what to sell. Growing up, I just grew up with nothing. 16, 17, had to make money, didn't know what to do. So I started selling some things I probably shouldn't have sold, but it worked by my communication skills with the people and what worked, And I jump into construction. I had no idea how to sell, but things would happen in my life where I would pour myself into somebody else through like the project, through the job, and that would manifest more than I could even dream or imagine. It happened in every business I got into. So when I came across your book, I was hanging out with someone. We're going to Tampa to a big Charlie Kirk Turning Point event, and she gives me this book. She says, "You got to read this book. This book sounds like your story." And so I opened the first page on the plane. I read this thing probably twice in that plane ride. Like, I can read fast. I have read a book about a Jim Quick book about reading quick. So I was able to read it and like, wow, but the page was, oh my gosh. I've only read a few books. I read Jim Quick's book. I read Good to Great. I read that book, and I read The Art of the.
One of my all-time favorites.
Oh man,
Wow.
that book is powerful. Yeah, I was in a business where I could see myself. I could represent, like, I could compare my CEO-manship compared to the good guy, the guy who's like building furniture on the weekends, coaching his kids' sports, to where other guys in my business were the opposite, the talkers, the mover and shakers, the things behind the scenes that would also manifest into some good. But it just blew me away, because I read this book and I was thinking of Shiloh. I texted him on the plane, "You got to get this book." I land off the plane. I pretty much run this book to him. Like, dude, this book has everything that I didn't know existed. Right? I didn't know that's how I was successful. I didn't know until I read it. Like, oh my gosh, I've lived this in real life without knowing it, you know?
Well, yeah. John David Mann, my co-author, who was really the lead writer, he's a fantastic storyteller. And the book is a parable, so that is very important to be a good storyteller. And I'm more of a how-to guy. John's a great storyteller. But we love hearing things like that, what you just said, and that is the people who had had always done that. And the book just sort of said to him, "Oh yeah, okay, good. I was on the right track, or I was doing it the right way." And so, we love when someone says, "Well, I, got information there that I didn't know about, and I applied it," and we love that too, of course.
Yeah.
But we really love when someone had built their business that way, had success that way, had done it, and they said, "Yeah, these principles that you and Mann talk about in the book, they're congruent with what I've already done."
Yeah.
And that we love that.
I couldn't believe it. It blew me away.
And it's funny because on the opposite side, I have not been in business for too long. My background was not in sales, but it was in teaching. I taught martial arts, and so the initial page that he showed me was on the teacher, and he texted me a page in the book, and I read it, Bob, and it was like everything in my mind started just going ding, 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 ding. And I just never thought about it on those terms where, and it's pretty much the law of compensation, but when she was great at what she did, which is what I felt I was very great at what I did, but there wasn't a way to ever actually make money from it. And so when you guys kind of gave that analogy in the book, something in my mind went off. It was like, ding, 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 because I'd always hoped for that, right? I always hoped that, if you're good at something and you really mean it, you can make money from it. But it wasn't really anything that I'd seen, and so you guys gave me such hope.
No, I appreciate that. It just that law number 2, the law of compensation, is all about scaling the immense value that you're providing. That's why Nicole Martin, the teacher in the story, said to Joe, the protege, that law number 1, the law of value, that's the foundational principle. Yeah. You've got to have that. As a martial arts instructor, I'm sure you were fantastic. That's the first part. But that only represents your potential income. Yeah. As she explained, your actual income is dependent upon how many lives you impact.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was, it was, and so just background on this book, like Joey said. So we fly to Tampa. He goes, "You've got to read this book." And I've read, in all honesty, a handful of books in my life from start to finish. I do love Napoleon Hill. I've listened on Audible to a few books, but this was one of the first books in a while that I read from start to finish, and it was a paradigm changer for me. And so I was stoked to find out that Pinder was loosely based on Bob Proctor, because I'd been listening to Bob Proctor. I haven't read any of his things, but I've been listening to him. And so when I got done reading this book, there was something in me that got so excited. I couldn't really explain it or put words to it, but it spoke to a lot of the dreams and a lot of things that were in me that I'm still working through. And so whereas Joey's done it in the business world, I still haven't. And this book was really kind of like um, it was like a pivotal moment, like you said, on the inside, right? Because for me, things haven't manifested yet, and so yeah, we're stoked to have you.
You're young, you've got time. You know, one of the things, and one of my favorite, well, I've got it up there on that site, so I don't have it within reach, but there's a great book to get. In fact, Bob Proctor first introduced me to this book about 20 years ago, called The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace D. Wattles. It was written in 1910.
Wow.
And one of the things he talks about is yes, make everything you're doing. First, you put your heart and soul into everything you're doing. You provide the most value you can in everything you're doing, no matter, even if you're not where you want to be right now, wherever you are, do things in that what he calls the certain way, that way of excellence. Okay,
Wow.
because you'll attract to you, what you want. Now, but here's the thing: work toward what you want, but don't feel hurried, because once you start rushing, now you're operating on the competitive plane instead of the creative plane. And you always want to be operating on the creative plane. And so that's what is going to create that kind of that environment or context for you to be able to thrive. So do all you can, as Waddle says, do all you can with all you've got right now. Do it as you're doing it, but don't feel as though you've got to rush to anything. It's going to happen in its proper time, and you'll be ready for it when it does.
That's so good, because that I've heard that. I think it was Bob Proctor. I heard that where the competitiveness is that stems from there being not a large amount, where the creative, there's an endless amount of everything. Could you go into that just a little bit more?
Yeah. So when we say, for example, in business, we say don't focus on your competition, focus on creating value for your customer or your client. Now, that does not mean that you don't recognize that you have competition. That wouldn't be living in truth, okay? And successful people deal in truths, all right? Yeah. I'm trying to think of his last name, and I'm not thinking of Ben Shapiro, when he says, the facts don't, care about your opinions, right? So you've got to be right. You've got to live in truth, right? And successful people deal in truths. They understand the laws of nature, and they work within those laws of nature, the universal principles and laws, physical laws, financial, economic laws, people laws, how to deal with, all the great things that we can do. Now, so we live in truth. We understand that there's competition. Absolutely. Of course there is. If you didn't acknowledge that you have competition, well, you'd put yourself in a pretty, disadvantageous position, right? Because your competition's probably thinking of you. So no, it doesn't mean thinking you don't have competition. You understand your competition. You know who they are. You understand their strengths, their weaknesses, their opportunities, their all those things. Absolutely. But you don't focus on your competition.
Yeah.
You focus on creating value. You live on the creative plane.
Wow.
When you do that, okay, your competition, if anything, is going to have to be thinking of you, right? So, but you don't want to be focusing on them. You focus on value creation. When you focus on value creation and you're living on that creative plane, you're seeing total abundance. You're seeing, first of all, enough for everyone, okay? And there's nothing anyone can take from you that's actually yours. And that's also from The Science of Getting Rich, which Bob Proctor, certainly buys into and talks about as well in his book, You Were Born to Be Rich. And so, but when we're focused on the competition, that's when we're living in a place of lack, right? Because we're thinking there's not enough. That's that limited pie. If I want my piece of pie, I've got to take someone else's. Whereas on the creative plane, you get together and you build a bigger pie. Now, again, that doesn't mean we're not looking at real world and truths. It means we're consciously living on that creative plane, and that's the difference.
That's so good.
That's huge. It's funny how like a lot of the laws in here are kind of like from I've read like the few books I've read. One of them is the Good Book, and the first law, the law of value, is pretty much the same as it is greater to give than it is to receive. Doesn't mean you're not going to receive. It just means that it's greater. And as you give is where I've seen the blessings flow in. The more I give to somebody, the more I give to organizations, the more I give to my friends, whether it's finances or mental stuff or just health, they just pour in those receivings,
Yeah, so there's a reason for that too, and it's not based on any magical or mystical or woo-woo kind of stuff. It actually makes very rational sense. When you're that person who can take your focus off yourself and place it on serving others. Okay, when you're that person who can move from an I focus or me focus to a focus on that other person, helping them, the marketplace, that person solve their challenges and problems. When you can move off of yourself and make it all about helping move that other person closer to happiness, people feel good about you. They feel great about you. They want to get to know you. They like you. They trust you. They want to be in relationship with you. They want to do business with you, and they want to tell others about you. They want to be your personal walking ambassador. Wow. And so when you think about it, when you shift your focus to them, there's nothing self-sacrificial about it. There's nothing doormatty about it. There's nothing martyrish about it. No, it's the way to do business. When I speak at sales conferences, one of the first things I'll say is nobody's going to buy from you because you have a quota to meet.
Right.
Okay. They're not going to buy from you for that reason. Yeah. They're not going to buy from you because you need the money. No. Right. And they're not even going to buy from you just because you're a nice person. Right. They're going to buy from you because they believe that they will be better off by doing so than by not doing so. Well, this is great news for the entrepreneur who has a servant's heart, right? Because if you're really looking out for that other person's interest, as Sam, one of the mentors in the story, told Joe, make your win all about the other person's win, right? Yeah. Well, you're creating that environment where that person wants to do business with you. And that's how you do. That's why this works. Again, it's based on concrete laws and principles.
And Shiloh, as the teacher, when in martial arts, that's what all his goal was, to see how far these kids could go, to be behind them when they win. He'd have more excitement from them winning than for him himself competing and getting the W,
Exactly. And that's so very important. And that comes across to them.
What's your favorite law out of all these? What's the one that speaks to you the most?
I would say the law of influence is the one I relate to the most.
I have a question, Bob, with regards to the story and what we're talking about, because when the book starts, Joe has to meet the quota by the end of the week, right? He's down his numbers for the quarter. He's trying to land that big kahuna. And sometimes in life it feels like you're not rushed, and it's a great feeling. I've found more often than not, for me, it seems like when you get behind the 8 ball, you stay behind the 8 ball. And until that shift happens, or until that breakthrough, or that big client happens, what would you say to someone like me who's in that position, to where it's almost like there is only a week before those very practical, things start to be needed, of whatever that looks like.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, and life is life, and things happen, and there are times we're behind the 8 ball. Okay, but again, here's the thing. Let's go back to a very, very basic idea, and that is nobody's going to buy from you because you're behind the 8 ball.
Right.
Right. Totally. They're going to buy from you because you have somehow find a way to communicate sufficient value to them that they want to buy from you right now. Yeah. So now it's even more important to take your focus off yourself and place it on how you can value to another person.
Because you see in the book, you see how now that you say that, it's almost like Joe, throughout the week, meeting more people, takes the focus off of himself. Almost not by accident, but he's just doing more things with more people, and his focus becomes off of himself.
That was his big shift. Absolutely. That was the big shift for Joe that he came to understand. That when you can move your focus, when you can shift your focus from getting to giving. And when we say giving in this context, we simply mean constantly and consistently providing immense value to others, right? When you do that, not only is it a more fulfilling way of conducting business, it's actually the most financially profitable way as well.
That's so good.
Yeah.
That have you noticed sometimes it's like as a principle, it's easier than the practical play out of that in a day to day, or how I don't know if that makes sense, but of like day in and day out, what does that look like?
Well, I mean, when you read a book, it's a book. It's not the real world. You've got to apply the principles to the real world. That's why, remember, Pindar's only condition to Joe was that he had to apply each law that very day before he went to sleep that night.
Yeah.
And that's the key. And that's what John and I want people to do. We want you to take the laws as you learn them. And don't worry about being perfect with them. You're not going to be. Nobody is. But just start applying them. Because once you do that and you take that step, that you get over your fear, and you are able to be more effective, and you're able to build in your small successes. And yeah, so yeah, apply those laws. Just start applying them, and as you do that, you're gonna find those successes, and you're gonna move from there. Yeah. There's no magic formula, though. No magic pill. You got to go out there and do them. That's why we like to say we people say, well, go-giver, is that the opposite of a go-getter? Not at all. We love go-getters. Go-getters are people of action, right? Yeah. Go-getters get things done. We all know, that you can have the nicest thoughts, best ideas, greatest of intent, but unless action's put into the mix, nothing's going to happen. It can't happen. So no, we want people to be go-getters, people of action, and go-givers, people who are absolutely laser focused on bringing immense value to others. We would say the opposite of a go-giver is a go-taker. And that's the person who feels almost entitled, if you will, to take without having added value to the person, to the process, to the situation. And go-takers generally are not, they're usually frustrated because they're rarely as successful as they think they deserve to be. And even when they are successful, and they can be, absolutely. It's a big world. There's many ways to attain financial success. It's tough, though, to be a go-taker and be sustainably successful, because you really have nobody on your side. You don't build a team of loyal people. You certainly don't build loyal customers. You've got to repeat the same process again and again and again and again. Not to mention, go-takers, even if they're able to sustain a financial living, and again, some are, usually their personal relationships are just not very good at all. Just by definition, they're go-takers. They don't, and most people don't want it, right? So yeah, I mean, that's really what it is. And that's why it's real world. You got to take the action.
I've noticed in myself more fear on that side of taking, like when my businesses are like just striving and blowing up, I almost feel like I'm in more fear than before when I'm trying to get to that point. Like the success brings in feel like, oh my gosh, am I gonna lose this? Like how am I gonna sustain this? How am I gonna keep it going? That's where like the anxiety and the fear kicks in for me the most. Like, does that like it's like I can't, like how am I gonna, I don't want to lose this, and I get caught up in that part of it. Like for you, do you feel like, do you like, what's the level of success that had that changed in your life, like the joy from that? Do you feel that? Do you feel like you did it, you set out, you had a dream and a vision, you put it on paper, and like living in that success, how does that feel for you?
Well, so remember, I mean, I'm 65 now, so I'm a lot older than you guys, and I've had a lot. Huh?
You're looking good. Looking good for 65.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. But so I've been through a lot of ups and downs, and so I've had those experiences, of course. One of the things is and I've certainly, again, been through them when I was really on a roll, and then I started questioning myself. This all comes down to our belief systems. And this is so very, very important. It's so vital to understand. We all see the world through a certain set of beliefs. These are our a belief, just to define. A belief is a subjective truth. It's the truth as we understand the truth to be, okay, how we see the world. That doesn't mean it's the truth. It means it's our truth. Again, this is what Ben's saying when he says facts don't care about your feelings, okay? Our subjective truths are how we see the world. When someone says it's my truth, what they're really saying is it's my belief, okay? So, but that's what a belief is. It's a subjective truth. We all see the world through a certain lens, and we see the truth being a certain thing. This belief system was given to us from, when we were babies, and basically it's a combination of upbringing, environment, schooling, news media, television shows, movies, popular culture, now social media, the whole thing. And so, but our basic set of beliefs is pretty much etched in stone by the time we're a little more than toddlers. And after that, our everything that comes into our lives sort of just builds upon that basic belief system. So most of us live our entire lives subject to what I call an unconscious operating system. Okay. Thinking that we're making choices based on free will and conscious thought, when really we're operating within if you remember the first movie, The Matrix, right? Only instead of machines, it's the beliefs that we've been handed before we were ever old enough to question anything, right? So let's say we have and I'm not saying this is you, I'm just saying, let's say a person has a belief about themselves that they're only able to be successful to a certain degree. Okay. Right. Then what happens is, and I'll tell you, this happened to me certainly when I was younger, and it was something I had to work through. They can reach a certain level of success, but once they hit more than that, okay, and they don't feel that's them, their belief system, their subjective truth says, I'm not someone who is that successful. They're going to find a way to sabotage their business, their life, and this is the person who, let's say they grew up in with let's say their parents had a bad relationship. Okay. I was so fortunate that I had great parents who were married 65 years. I count my blessings, but I knew many people who grew up in really dysfunctional relationships, and what did they do? That's who they ended up marrying. They ended up marrying into dysfunctional relationship. Why? That was their belief system. It didn't mean that they consciously said, "Oh, good, I want to find someone I can be miserable with." Of course not. It was that's their subjective truth. Their belief is that's what marriage is. The best book I ever read on this, and please excuse me for turning my back on you for just a moment. This was written in 1960. I read it in the 80s. It's the first book that started teaching me about how our beliefs controlled our thought processes, our actions, and our level of success, called Psycho-Cybernetics by Dr. Maxwell Maltz. It's a classic. And I've heard a lot of people. And I'm telling you, in fact, there's a martial arts teacher who actually does a lot of work, who now has the Psycho-Cybernetics Foundation, I think, Matt Fury, who is sort of the person who's kind of carrying this on. And so if you look it up, I think there's some books and audios by Matt that he goes through this. So you'll relate to that, being a martial artist. But yeah, so let's say we grow up with negative money messages all around us, right? Well, so and then we watch movies where you see Spider-Man, the first Spider-Man movie. My friend Randy Gage points out, Randy's a great teacher and practitioner on abundance, and he points out this great scene where, not a great scene, it's a horrible scene actually, but it's a very poignant scene where Peter Parker and his Uncle Ben are talking about, they're being poor. And Uncle Ben says, well, Peter, we may be poor, but at least we're honest.
Wow.
What a horrible message. And that's basically the message of every movie. It's the message of so much politics. It's the message of so much, right? Everywhere you get these horrible, what I call anti-prosperity messages, right? So if you grow up with that, and it's in your unconscious, it's not in your, it's in your unconscious. And you get to a certain point now where you're making a lot of money, but wait a second, inside you're thinking, but honest people don't make money.
Yeah.
Right.
Only crooks make, right? And so what are you doing? Well, if you've been brought up to be honest and trustworthy and there's a disconnect there, right? There's some cognitive dissonance there. What am I going to do with this? Well, your unconscious is going to rule. That's what Dr. Maltz is talking about here. So then you're going to start. So my thought is start questioning your premises. When you when you're really cranking it out and business is great and you're feeling terrific, and then you get that thought inside you that says, wait a second, this is getting too good. Something's going to go wrong. I'm going to lose this. Start questioning yourself. Why am I thinking that?
Right.
What truth is behind that? Not my or what is my subjective truth first about why that's true, but then what's the real truth? Is there really any reason to think that something's going to go right? Okay. And so, and start, again, question your premises and start asking yourself where these are coming from and work through those. Very, very important.
That's so heavy. I've been in therapy for about 3 years now, since my divorce, probably 4 years. And that's the first thing we went through was the belief system, changing my belief system. Because I had the success, I had an 18-year marriage, I had a business, I had a house. But then I go through the divorce and I just drop right to my knees. My mind's gone, and I went back to that childhood, like the kid who had nothing, with the horrible parents, like not together, on drugs, and that re-changed my belief system. Thinking, oh my gosh, I'm gonna be them now because I'm going through the same like pain, the same loss, and getting back to my belief system, going through the facts, what's true, what's happened, how have you been successful, what have you done, and not living in this fear, make-believe world, the noisy neighbors, my therapist likes to call them. These people that are saying, you're not good enough, you can't do it, you're going to be a failure, you're going to do this. That's not the belief system. Your belief system is what's been like through you,
And here's the thing. You've proven to yourself all the things you can do. And just talking with you, I mean, you're a great guy and absolutely deserve all the success. Okay. And so the great opportunity for you now is, you had all this, you lost it, you got kind of sucked into a vortex of negative thinking and going back to and letting the subconscious, the unconscious control you and your previous set of beliefs. But see, you're aware of it. You're conscious of it. A lot of people, that never happens. And they go downhill and they keep buying into those beliefs. At least on a conscious level, all of that's baloney. None of that's true. Okay. So now it's just a matter of working at what you need to do to align your conscious with your unconscious.
Yeah.
And so great that you're in therapy. That's fantastic. Also continue to look at people who are, the great prosperity teachers, Reed Proctor, read David Nagel, The Millionaire Within, The Millions Within. Science of Getting Rich. Subscribe to Randy Gage's blog and to Sharon Lecter's blog and Ellen Rogan and all these people who talk about prosperity, and 95 to 99% of what they talk about is simply keeping the yucky stuff away, right? Dealing with those negative thoughts that really are false.
Yeah,
they're false thoughts.
Yeah.
Another great book, and I'm going to tell you, this is a game changer. This book, it's the third book by Michael A. Singer, and it's called Living Untethered. He wrote a book called The Untethered Soul. That was his first book, and it was brilliant. But this last book of his, I am telling you, get this book today and start reading it. Living Untethered. it goes right into telling you why you feel and believe exactly what you do, and how to move past it. It's just absolutely brilliant.
That's heavy.
Yeah.
Gotta get that one.
Yeah. Our favorite author gave us another book to read.
Exactly.
And like you said, Bob, the negative vortex. Like, I think it's Napoleon Hill who says our mind is a fertile ground. It doesn't care what we plant, negative or good. It'll basically grow it in abundance. And that's one thing that I've noticed. Because for me, it's still the idea phase and kind of the dream stage. Because me and Joey, we have some things we're working on, but it's almost as if when I think good thoughts, it produces more good thoughts, which is, it's like common sense, but same, in reverse with when there's doubt and there's fear, and I'm going, well, this is too big or it's just too unrealistic.
Yeah.
Either way, I'm right. Do you have any like practical little nuggets to navigating that on this side of success, if you will?
The key is to stay conscious of them.
Okay.
This is the biggest thing we can do. Stay conscious of our thoughts. Now, when you get the bad thoughts, the negative ones, don't resist them. And this is where what Michael Singer teaches. Don't try to resist those thoughts. Acknowledge the thoughts and then just let them pass through you.
Oh my God.
Okay. Yeah.
That's good.
And then what you're going to want to do is focus on the good thoughts, focus on the the positive, obviously. But don't deny the other ones. Just acknowledge them, let them, don't fight them, because what you resist persists. We all know that, right? So let them pass. Yeah, that's nothing. Yeah, and that wasn't original of me. That's a long that's an oldie. But just let them pass right through you, but acknowledge them, let them pass. But the key is you've got to be conscious of it to let that happen. So when I was in my 30s, I started sort of, I guess, what today would be called a Bob Burg 2.0 type of thing, where I reshaped. I realized that there were a whole lot of traits and characteristics and habits and different things that I needed to really change if I was gonna live up to my potential and so forth. And so I followed a system from that Ben Franklin in his book The Autobiography taught, but where I took 13 different traits and I worked on them and so forth. But anyway, what I would do with some of them, okay, to make them conscious, is I would keep them everywhere. I'd put a note everywhere so that I saw that. So for 1 week, let's say, I'd be working on positive speech as opposed to gossip, because I was somebody who I always had something negative to say about people. I just that was me. And so I decided that I was going to change that. Okay. And so I put a sign up there that said, not a sign, but, a little yellow sticky note with the word gossip. I put a circle around it with an X. Right. And so I'd see it all the time. I'd see it on my computer. I'd see it on my phone. I'd see it on the bathroom mirror. I'd see it, wherever I was. So I could totally focus and stay conscious of that. Or I had a bad habit of interrupting. And I knew that was a habit I needed to break. So I put a sign up or leave a little yellow sticky notes everywhere when I was working on that trait that would just say, no interrupting, don't interrupt, or interrupt with a circle and a slash through it. And I'd stay focused on it. And so what would happen is I'd be in a conversation and I'd interrupt, but I'd be conscious of it.
Oh,
and I could apologize. Yeah. Once you get conscious of it, now you're in a position to be able to do something about it.
Yeah, my fiance tells me that all the time. Like, hey, just shut your mouth, let them talk. Because I want to get my nuggets in. I want to throw out my ideas and my philosophies real quick. I just sit there and shut up. And I tell myself, don't interrupt all the time. I want to say what I want to say, but it's better to hear. It's better to listen a lot of the times for me. You get so much more out of it, You
ever heard listening is not waiting for your turn to talk?
Let me say something. Yeah. Let me throw it out there.
Well, Bob, thank you so much. I want to be sensitive of your time today, but thank you so much for joining us. This was such a pleasure.
It was awesome.
Pleasure was mine. Thank you guys for having me.
What? Sorry, I interrupted.
Yeah.
I already did it. Just one thing I want to make for everyone to hear is those thoughts. There is the dark thoughts and there is the good thoughts, and we're all battling those two things. Like Tom and Jerry cartoon, where you got the good guy and the bad guy. They're always speaking, and I try to build happy trees. Like you build happy. Every time there's a good thought, you keep another good thought, another good thought. It could be I'm healthy. I can run fast. I can jump. Whatever it is, each little happy thought will create like branches in the mind as they grow into this big blossoming tree of happy thoughts. With negative thoughts, it'll do the same thing.
Yeah.
You dwell on negative thoughts, and then you'll just fall in this deep, dark depression. And if you can just look at those thoughts, hey, those are true. Those are past. Those things happen. I'm gonna focus on the positive and keep building these trees. Tree of life, you know?
Yeah.
Excited for what you guys are doing, and I
Thank
just see
you.
great things for both of you.
Awesome. Thanks, Bob.
Thanks
so
Bob.
much. Appreciate it.
it.